you. So I'm a research associate at the University of Edinburgh, and I'm part of a team comprising two colleagues from the School of Education, Jen Ross and Jeremy Knox, specialising in digital education, and also Chris Speed from Design Informatics, Edinburgh College of Art. We also have an almost full-time software engineer, Chris Barker, who's working on the project that I'm going to talk about now. The project, which is called Artcasting, is AHRC funded through an early career funding stream rather than connected communities or digital transformations. That said, aspects of the project are highly relevant to the Symposium, specifically in terms of geolocation and digital technologies, but also evaluation and measurement methodologies. I find it interesting that the latter of these themes appears to separate measurement from evaluation, particularly in the context of the dominance of instrumental and measurable approaches to thinking about arts and cultural value. My own area of research expertise is arts evaluation, particularly thinking about the values that are or are not included within the process, and where evaluation is seen to be thinking about the discernment of value. So what is Artcasting? It's a digital and mobile approach to arts evaluation. Conceptually, I think it can also be viewed as a resistance to technocratic approaches to thinking about cultural value. It might also be viewed as an inventive approach to identifying the problems and tensions of evaluation in the cultural heritage sector, some of which I'll identify later. But what is it not? It's not a solution to all the problems of arts evaluation, but it's a provocation and it's an exploratory project, so I'm really keen to hear what you think. It's also perhaps useful to think of it as an app, of the app, not just as a product, or not as a product, but as a process of data collection. So the Artcasting project has been developed in the context of Artist Rooms on Tour. For those of you not familiar, Artist Rooms is a collection of more than 1,600 works of international contemporary art acquired in 2008 by National Galleries of Scotland and Tate. It's shared throughout the UK in a programme of exhibitions organised with associate galleries. Essentially, galleries apply to Artist Rooms to host an exhibition. They identify the artist's work that they would like to exhibit, and they say something about how they will engage with particular audiences. Artist Rooms exhibitions are presented as individual rooms devoted to a single artist. And the broader aims of Artist Rooms lie in inspiring new audiences, particularly young people aged 13 to 25. So some examples of artists on tour exhibitions include Damien Hirst at the Pier Arts Centre in Orkney, Gerhard Richter, currently at Plymouth City Museum and Art Gallery, got a day to go there, and Robert Mapplethorpe in Bowes Museum and Art Gallery in County Durham. So the aims of the actual Artcasting project are fourfold: to understand how mobilities approaches can enrich arts evaluation, and I'll say a little more about that in a second, to design, develop and pilot an Artcasting platform, to generate a new approach to evaluation that can be built on in the future and hopefully to influence Artist Rooms evaluation practice. I'll just have you have a look at the research questions that we're seeking to answer. I'll hopefully bring these to life as I get on to the practical demonstration of the app. So I want to talk briefly about the theory underpinning Artcasting by thinking about mobilities. Rather than focusing on social life within bounded settings like the physical space of a gallery or museum, a mobilities approach explores the movement of people, of objects, of ideas, their trajectories and the networks that emerge as a result. Mobilities can be thought of socially, spatially and technologically. So technological mobilities are evident in the proliferation of these devices and tablets. They free the visitor from the physical place of the gallery, the temporalities and perhaps also the social expectations that are associated with it. In the context of artcasting, a concern for spatial mobilities includes thinking about relationships between artwork and place. In relation to artist rooms on tour, this generates some questions which I think slightly connect with what Neil was talking about earlier in terms of the stories. So where have the artworks come from? Where might they go to, or where might they belong? How might they get there? What might they do on their journey, or when they arrive? So how might we understand visitor experience or visitor engagement differently as a result of asking people to explore relationships between artwork and place? Does articulating the complexity of visitor engagement add something to the arts evaluation process? If we take a look at the Artcasting logo, some of this mobilities thinking is apparent in the design. Notably, the walls of the gallery as a definite place that's disrupted by the snapping off of the corner. And the snapped off corner can also be seen as an arrow, highlighting the role of direction and movement in the functionality of artcasting. So that's artcasting in sort of conceptual terms, and I'm now going to shift focus and think about artcasting in practice. So this is a one-year project, and it's running from May last year to the end of April this year. We have 2 research sites, so galleries exhibiting artist rooms on tour exhibitions, and these are at the top there, Bowes Museum exhibiting Robert Mapplethorpe, and the Scottish National Gallery of Modern Art in Edinburgh, with Roy Lichtenstein, which finished actually last Sunday. And the way the team works is we have designed sort of deep days where each of us from our different perspectives contributes something to the project. We think about the design of the app and what data might be produced. We've also collected data through interviews with a range of stakeholders, those involved in the arts evaluation process, so artist rooms evaluation processes. We've also spoken to a funder and someone within the cultural sector who's recognised for their sort of innovative approach to thinking about evaluation. I'm writing a paper at the moment that's based on those interviews, and it's looking at metaphors of evaluation and what they tell us about contemporary practice in the cultural heritage sector. So some of those metaphors include how long is a piece of string? It's a sort of dysfunctional length because the cultural sector don't necessarily know what they're meant to be tying it up with, or what they're meant to be tying up. Longitudinal evaluation is seen as the holy grail. So thinking specifically about wanting to understand visitor engagement better, while at the same time being constrained by existing approaches. And equally, evaluation being seen as a transactional process completed to secure a final tranche of project funding. We've run workshops with young people exploring the connections between artwork and place with different ages. I'm sure you can imagine that with an age range of 13 to 25, we might be concerned about how different age groups engage with the ideas that we're talking about. We've also held events at both these sites where visitors have tried out the Artcasting app. The app is downloadable from the App Store. It's currently available on iOS, though Android we're hoping will follow towards the end of February. So I want to talk a little more about the tensions of existing evaluation practice. And by exploring the issues through the creation of this digital platform, we've exposed some of the tensions that are associated with evaluation, and some of which lie outside the remit of the project. I've spoken already a little about dominant measures of cultural value. And quite often the evaluations that are taking place, they're largely about audience development, understanding who is visiting in order to engage with new audiences. Organisational priorities can be a challenge, particularly in smaller spaces, where actually funding for a project is acquired and then the focus is on delivery, and quite often what happens is evaluation gets pushed to the end. The methods that are used are quite often questionnaires. They're largely questionnaires, again, focusing on audience development, and they take place after the fact. So there's this separation of the creative experience, the engagement with the artwork, and then you're asked to fill out a questionnaire as you're leaving the gallery. or perhaps even 2 questionnaires, one in the context of Artist Rooms on Tour, the exhibition, but also another questionnaire in terms of visiting the actual gallery that you've been to. And sometimes these can be burdensome. Digital approaches provide efficiency. What we're seeing where digital approaches have been used, they're largely a questionnaire that's being translated onto an iPad. So they're efficient in terms of bringing all the data together rather than someone actually inputting information from hard copy questionnaires. So the overwhelming sort of consensus is that there's little room for invention or imagination in evaluation. And so we're trying to challenge this. So how does Artcasting work? And this is our Artcasting map in the background where you can see the casts I'm going to talk about in a second, and what it looks like on my phone. So Artcasting asks visitors to Liechtenstein and Maplethorpe to choose an artwork and digitally cast it to a new location, adding information about their choice of cast and their associations with the artwork. We spoke a little about beacons last night, some of us. We have used beacons in the gallery to aid users by reordering the artworks as you move around the exhibition. Beyond the gallery and out in the world, casts can be encountered through geofencing technology that alerts those with an app that they're in the vicinity of their own or someone else's cast. And encountering casts generates further opportunities to engage with the process by inviting you to recast the encountered artwork on a new journey. So through these processes, Artcasting simultaneously helps visitors make imaginative connections with artworks, and at the same time helping galleries and museums understand how people are experiencing and engaging with their exhibitions in and beyond the gallery. So here's an example just showing you some screenshots of the sort of functionality. The first one is a Maplethorpe image of David Hockney. The second screenshot shows you there are 3 categories that we're asking people to complete. They choose the place and they can give that place a name, which you can see in the third screenshot. You can also specify the time, I'll talk about that in a second, that you want it to arrive, and you can provide a description and you can identify some tags. So this is the data that we're actually collecting through the app. When Is It Travelling offers users the opportunity to send the artwork to the past or to the future. If you're sending it in the context of today, visitors can choose the speed of travel. And we've just actually changed that from fast to slow to meandering and hurtling. Again, sort of engaging with the playfulness and trying to get people to think about the journey of the artwork. Visited before asks people, it relates to the place that they've sent the artwork rather than the actual gallery space. And data from under 16s, that's reviewed to make sure that individuals aren't identified before they're cast and included on the public gallery map. So a couple of examples of art casts. Top one's from someone who's 12 or under. And this is a different type of art cast. It's an example from the Maplethorpe exhibition. And granted, this is a performative example, but I think it demonstrates something beyond the casts that are sending artworks to friends or in the context of memories and their own personal reflections about a particular place. This cast is a provocation. It's thinking about the artwork in the context of doing something in the world. It wasn't MEP that wrote this, I think you can read it. This is a reminder to me and my fellow MEPs to look after and welcome people fleeing conflict who are hanging on to life in the most difficult circumstances. And actually this arrives on the 1st of December last year. So the last thing I want to sort of think about really is some challenges and possibilities. Technology. It seems strange that I would say that coming from sort of a team of digital educators. But just as technology creates new possibilities, it also presents challenges. And I think in an ideal world, probably Android and iOS would have been ready together. In actual fact, iBeacons needed to be set up differently to work with different iOS devices. And I know nothing about the technology and how it's programmed, but I'm learning an awful lot about it. But the project isn't about developing a fully formed app. If we were doing that, we would have had a whole team of developers working on it. So Wi-Fi as well. This is difficult to believe, I'm sure, but the Scottish National Gallery of Modern Art and Bowes Museum in County Durham, when they were built, they weren't really thinking about Wi-Fi. So despite improving Wi-Fi within Bowes, we're also now having to work to produce an offline version that will hold casts until the mobile device comes into contact with the signal, and it would then send the casts. I've listed the purpose of evaluation as a challenge because a shift in thinking, I think, is required. In light of the tensions mentioned earlier, I think there's a need to resist ingrained ways of thinking about cultural value. I think it's there, I think it's evident in the general enthusiasm we've had for this project, but it's also evident in speaking to gallery staff who are wanting to understand more about visitor engagement with artwork, so wanting to go beyond this audience development perspective. Okay, so some of the possibilities. Well, the first is going beyond audience development to understand visitor engagement. One of our early events, where we got lots of people doing Artcasting, we understood that conceptually people were using the app in 3 different ways. They were wanting to learn about art and to make connections between the artworks they saw on the walls and their broader knowledge of art, and perhaps point to other connections to other artists. They were reflecting, and you saw that in the example of the person that had built the treehouse. But they were also using Artcasting in quite imaginative ways. So perhaps that would include the MEP's use of Artcasting to do something in the world, or perhaps the connection for Ronaldo. Beyond the gallery, is it useful for galleries to know and to understand that although engagement in the building may last 20 minutes or an hour, or however long someone stays, if people are then encountering casts out in the world and re-engaging, well, that extends the visitor experience. Is that a useful thing for galleries to know? Is there a co-production element to this that's interesting? So encountering your own or someone else's casts, do you then generate casts as a result of that? Do you send it on somewhere else? And are there conversations happening between the ways that people are engaging with the process? Artworks in transit. Is it interesting to know how many artworks are in transit at a given time? Or how far David Hockney has travelled in Artcasting miles compared to Roy Lichtenstein's The Crash? The exhibition duration. If an exhibition lasts 6 weeks, for instance, in the bounded space of the gallery, through Artcasting, if we understand that people are sending their casts 50 years back in time, 50 years into the future, does that extend the experience or the exhibition duration somehow? How can we use the tags to categorize people's experience in different ways? What does it tell us about different groups of visitors? And for me, I think this is a fascinating one. By asking people whether they've visited the place before, if they haven't visited the place before, does that tell us something about the imaginative capacity of the gallery or the artworks to take someone, to send someone to a new place? So these are some of the possibilities that we're hoping for Artcasting and looking at the data to explore at the moment. If you'd like to know more about the project, that is our website. You can follow it on #Artcasting, and there's my email address there. Thank you.